Positive Anime Reviews is a review show that is designed for people who aren't very picky about their anime, like me. Most anime I watch ends up in my 5 out of 5 category. My reviews are for those people who are looking for a reason to watch anime rather than hate on it. I am willing to give any and all anime a chance before stating my opinion. Lastly, my reviews are all my opinion and might and or most likely won't match yours. If you don't agree, that's totally fine. Just be respectful in the comments section. Thank you. And as always, possible spoiler warning ahead. Hey guys, Darth Gloric here, back with another positive anime review. Today we will be talking about Guilty Crown. So, as you can see from the title, this is labeled a not-so-positive anime review. So this is like one of, I think, 2 or something of reviews that I've done that hasn't been positive. And so buckle up, this is going to be why. So anyway, so yeah, we are reviewing Guilty Crown. So this anime aired in fall of 2011, so it's not exactly the newest kid on the block. And sorry, I keep going back and forth between my document here. And I'm pretty sure there is a dub. I didn't check out the dub. I've only watched the sub, so maybe it's great. I don't know. But there is a dub, I'm almost positive. Now, let me go ahead and switch back over. So this is not a adaptation from a manga. This is an original work. So I mean, based upon the site, of course, is what I am seeing. So, and of course, we will be starting like always with our synopsis. And so it's much easier than listening to me ramble. So, Japan 2039, 10 years after the outbreak of the apocalypse virus, an event solemnly regarded as Lost Christmas, the once proud nation has fallen under the rule of the GHQ, an independent military force dedicated to restoring order. Funeral Parlor, a guerrilla group led by the infamous Guy Tsutsugami, I think is how you'd pronounce that, act as freedom fighters, offering the only resistance to GHQ's cruel despotism. I know the word, I can't pronounce it. Despotism. Despotism? That's not right either. Whatever. Inayori Yuzuriha, I think that's how you pronounce that, a key member of Funeral Parlor, runs into the weak and unsociable Shu Oma during a crucial operation, which results in him obtaining the Power of Kings, an ability which allows the wielder to draw out the manifestation of an individual's personality, or voids. Now an unwilling participant in the struggle against GHQ, Shu must learn to control his newfound power if he is to help take back Japan once and for all. Guilty Crown follows the action-packed story of a young high school student who is dragged into a war, possessing an ability that will help him uncover the secrets of the GHQ, Funeral Parlor, and Lost Christmas. However, he will soon learn that the truth comes at a far greater price than he could have ever imagined. Oh man. So there you go. Yeah, so that's the synopsis. So going into our next section of rating, which is how clean or dirty is the anime. This is definitely an R anime. There is a pretty fair amount of violence. There is like swearing and stuff. There is some blood, but it's not like it's so bloody that it's like, you know, it's not a horror anime, so that there is a little bit of blood and gore, and there is lots of intense moments. Mostly it is for its adult like drama, and I feel like if you're too young, you might not understand what's happening, and I feel like you would need to be older to understand / appreciate things. Now, going into genre, before we get too deep into this, of course your genre is going to be action, sci-fi, superpower, drama, romance, all of those things. Now, on the site it listed as mecha. I disagree, there is no mechas in this, so I don't know why it's listed as mecha. But regardless, as far as season length is concerned, the season length is 22 episodes across one season. So there is one season of this anime, 22 episodes long. The durations of each episode is 24 minutes, so exactly what you would expect. Now there is a lot of other stuff that dances around. Like it says like on the site, it says there's a side story and a prequel, all this stuff. Now don't be deceived. There is a side, but there is like a side story, but it's like a four panel manga. It's like it's think of it kind of like an OVA or a special. It's pretty much a special is what it is. So it's like a special. The prequel is the same thing. It's just like a special, and so I didn't even bother to watch them because I read the synopsis and made sure they weren't related to the actual main story plot, and they're not. So if you just loved the anime and you wanted to watch them, you're more than welcome to do so. But I didn't because they weren't plot related. So I didn't really care that much. Now, as far as going back into our review, there is not anything after each episode. Now, I think that maybe across, maybe in one episode or something, there's one episode with something afterwards, but for the most part, there is not something after each episode, which I prefer it that way because that means whatever you see is what you get. You're not missing anything, and that is, for me, a nice change of scenery. So, really quick, as you could tell, we're kind of blowing through this quickly, and the reason why is because obviously this is labeled a not so positive anime review for a reason. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to blow through this review and tell you everything non-spoiler wise, and tell you get across basically everything that happens. I'll tell you my final rating and then I'll tell you why. And it's after that point that it will be spoiler heavy because I will tell you what happens and why I gave it the review, the score that I did. So if you don't want to hear spoilers and you want to see it anyway, then I will of course warn you before we get to that point. Before I start spoiling it, I will warn you, and then you'll have time to leave, and then you'll know the score. You'll know that I didn't love it, but you won't know all of the spoiler reasons as to why I didn't love it. Anyway, so I just thought I would warn you as the reason why we're blowing through this quickly, because I don't know how long this review is going to be, considering what we have to talk about afterwards, just in case you were wondering. So, moving into our character list. Now, the character list is decently big, but not overwhelming. There's not very many main characters. There's a fair amount of supporting characters, but of course we will be going into probably just the main characters. And we'll probably just be going into the main characters, and then if I mention one in the spoiler section, if I mention something, then I'll basically try to explain who that character is, basically. So, moving into our first main character, of course, it's going to be Shu Oma. Shu is the main character. He is the main guy of this anime. And in personality, he's kinda... He's not very good socially, right? Which, of course, I can understand. When I was younger, I certainly wasn't very good at socially, and I still don't like it, but I was worse at it when I was younger. Regardless, so he's not very good socially. He has a couple of friends, but he doesn't really get people. He doesn't really understand them, and he has a hard time relating to them, which, of course, that I can totally understand that. But he kind of tends to feel bad for himself, and he tends to kind of piss people off. He tends to make a lot of people kind of angry because he doesn't really get them, and I don't know. It's just that, he evolves, but he starts the anime kind of young, right? I mean, obviously, but a lot of experiences happen to him which make him mature rapidly, and it makes him change rapidly, and... It means a lot. So as far as picture is concerned, he is like the brown-haired main guy. I'm certain whatever pictures I find of this anime will probably have him on the front, plastered across the front. But of course I'll have an arrow and a name so you know who I'm talking about. But so he really evolves pretty quickly as things go on. And so by closer to the end, he gets even maybe midway through, he's pretty mature and he's a lot more likable. So at first he's a little bit doesn't get people, but doesn't take too long before he does. So our next main character is going to be the other main character is Inuyori. Now Inuyori is Shu's love interest, and she is the pink-haired main girl. Now, as far as personality goes, at first she seems very reserved. You don't really. She seems. There is a character type for it, but I don't remember what it is, what it's called anymore. But basically, she's kind of somber, in expression and stuff. But she really She evolves, and you get to know her better as the anime goes on, and then you realize that she's not as not shallow, because that's not the right word, but she's not as reserved as she seems. There's a lot more going on underneath, and she's a lot more in depth than she may appear. And she's awesome, and she is just awesome. And of course, like I said, she's the love interest for Shu. She is very, and I like her because she's very, very supportive of him. And things happen in the anime that we'll get to in the spoiler section, which a lot develops, and she sticks by him when no one else would. And through thick and thin, she's always by his side, supportive and loyal, and that means a lot. and it is really, really cool. And again, we're going to get heavily into everything in the spoiler section, so I'm just kind of glazing over a basically what you need to know, and so we'll get heavily into everything in the spoiler section, so bear with me. So the next and the last main character is going to be Guy Tsutsugami, I think is how you pronounce it. But anyway, so Guy is, I think it's blonde. I think he's like the blonde-haired main dude, and he is the leader of the Resistance. He's kind of a really intense guy. I mean, obviously, he leads the Resistance against this, like, you know, corporate, like, government type of thing. So he, of course, leads the Resistance Funeral Parlor, which, by the way, is a really cool name for a Resistance. He's a really intense guy. That he's pretty brutal to Shu, especially at first, because of course he's trying to shape him into what needs to happen. He's trying to make him stronger and not quite so wishy-washy. And he does manage to do so. But as things go on and you realize more of what Guy is like, you realize that he does care about the cause, and he does care about what happens, and he does care about his people. It may seem brutal, like he doesn't, especially at first, as he might seem like he's kind of cruel, but in time you do realize more of what happens, and everything makes a little more sense as things go on. And then you like him more as things go on. Now, there is some pretty heavy developments regarding him later on, which of course we'll get to in the spoiler section, but basically that's basically what you need to know. So, going on to our favorite / most hated characters. My favorite character is Inayori, and again, I'll probably explain why in the spoiler section. But my favorite character is Inayori. At first, first of all, she's very pretty. That's the first reason, obviously. The second reason, though, is because she's very loyal to Shu, and there's a lot of crazy story things that happen that she sticks with him, and other people don't. And especially considering the crazy stuff that was happening, that says a lot. And I think a person's actions speaks above most everything else. And Inayori is my favorite character for sure. Now, as far as most hated character, I didn't really have any characters that I hated. I mean, of course, you don't like the villains or anything. Of course, you don't like the villains, but it's not that like I hated them because they're like like they're irritating or whatever. Because they're the villains. They're not supposed to be good guys, and you're not rooting for them. You're just not. But you shouldn't be, and so it's not like you made a character that was annoying. They're the villains. So I don't really have one. Now, moving on into animation and music. The animation in this anime is gorgeous. It is very, very pretty. The animation is really pretty. Another incredible strong suit of this anime is the music. The music is really good. Now, especially Inayori. Now, Inayori is actually at least was maybe she was a singer in a band, and her singing voice, or whoever they have doing the singing voice, is just really pretty. It's very pretty, and the music is really strong, really good, and it's really, really fun to listen to. And the animation is great, which honestly really helps sell the action scenes of the anime, because of course it's an action anime. There's a lot of actions and like voids being drawn out in battle and stuff, and it makes it feel like intense, because it is intense, and it makes it feel like that. There's lots of just the use of the powers is very pretty. All the character models are really pretty. It's just all really well. It's really pretty to look at. It's really fun to listen to. That's definitely a strong point of the anime. So, last, we are at our final rating and recommendation. The rating I'm about to give this, if you just listen to up to this point, you're not going to understand why. And to understand why, you're probably going to want to listen to the spoiler section. And if you don't want it spoiled, then after I give the final rating, you'll have a chance to leave if you want to. So, final rating and recommendation. Final rating, I'm going to give this one a 3 out of 5. Meh. This anime was okay, but there were several things wrong that kind of ruined it for me, and it's probably not worth buying. Okay, now, here is the spoiler section. So if you don't want it spoiled, I will give you 5 seconds to leave. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. So if you're still here, it's because you want it spoiled, and you want to know why I gave it a 3 out of 5, considering all of the pretty much good things I said about the anime earlier. Okay, here is why. So, The anime was really good. For the most part, there's a lot of stuff that was really well made. There was a lot of things that were really put together. What kind of ruined it for me is there was a lot as things got closer to the end. There was a lot of things towards the ending which were not good. That I don't like at all. One of the big things is Guy, even though he was the leader of the funeral parlor, he was the leader of the rebels, I guess. He was leader of the resistance. That's the word. He was the leader of the resistance. So he ends up dying to save the main dude, Shu's life. So he dies to save Shu's life, so he dies to save his life, and then which is sad, right? Because it really like messes everybody up. So he dies to save Shu's life, but then he ends up coming back as like the villain. So they bring him back somehow, and he's like, so he like cuts off Shu's arm and he kidnaps Inuyori, and like after everything else that happened. So the other major things that was happening, so first back to Guy. So they reveal Guy's backstory, and like he was experimented on as a kid by the villains and all of this stuff, but then he escapes, and he's tied to this whole like apocalypse event anyway, and so it's kind of revealed, and I might be wrong because there was a lot going on towards the end, and it was kind of hard to process it all, but to my understanding is that he was evil all along. It wasn't that he was brought back and he turned out to be, and they made him evil. Based upon his backstory, it seems like he was going to be evil all along. And so I don't like that. I liked him as the freedom fighter, and I could even be okay with them bringing him back as a villain, like if it had been like, oh, he's not the same guy, or he's suddenly evil. But it seemed to me like they're saying that he was evil all along, and I don't like that. I liked him better as the freedom fighter. Even if they brainwashed him to make him evil, fine, I can get behind that. Just don't make him evil all along. Didn't like that. The other major thing, that this event happens, this apocalypse event, 10 years ago, and so now this main like company that runs Japan, essentially GHQ, they have like absolute control over everything. So they decide that they want to take out any like all these voids and all of this stuff, and they're always trying to kidnap Inuyori, and it's because it has something to do with Shu having an older sister that supposedly died in the apocalypse event, but she was actually evil. Like she's like somehow tied to this event. And there's a lot of plot related, so I'm not going to go into all of it because we would be here forever. But she's like actually evil, and she's like because this meteor or something fell from the sky, and that's what made this whole apocalypse event kick off in the first place. That's part of the reason. And the first person who found that meteor that hit the ground was Mana, which is Shu's older sister, and it turned her into this like super evil chick, and she's like keeps trying to kill everybody. And then that's how Guy is tied into her, is because he escapes this the brainwashing of the torture of this facility as a kid, just to end up being found by Mana, and then Mana tries to make him evil, and apparently she succeeds because he ends up being evil later. So it obviously ends up being basically working. So it was a lot, and so I was fine with most of that. But basically, so GHQ, the main evil company, decides that they're going to like seal off this section of the city, that they're going to seal it off, and that with these like giant walls, and they're going to call for like containment, saying that like the virus that killed everybody is loose, and so they're quarantining this section of the city with these walls that are basically on rollers, so they can roll closed, so like they can shrink the quarantine zone, and so everyone on the outside doesn't question it, but everyone on the inside, which includes all of our main people, and half of the resistance, is now going to slowly get killed and picked off. So now they're having to ration food and cures for this virus and stuff. So I mean, all of that's fine. But so in it inside this quarantine zone is the school that Shu goes to and Inuyori goes to, and half of the resistance are pretending to go to. So half of them are inside of this. So there is a student council president, but these all students, of course, are locked in here for like weeks at a time or whatever. So like they have to be. So they're starting to panic. It's starting to like devolve into like Hunger Games. And so the student council is like trying to keep everyone together so they don't kill each other. But everyone gets pissed off at the current student council president, so they ends up basically ousting her. And then they actually end up voting Shu into control because by then he's like basically a badass. And so they end up voting Shu into power. And then so Shu's another love interest of his is named Hare. Now Hare is a girl that ends up dying because of the actions of another student, which would be one of Shu's friends, pretty much his only other friend. So Hare ends up dying, and it's pretty much the fault of one of Shu's friends. Well, Shu, although he did like he didn't like have a crush on Hare. At least I don't think so. But he did know that she had a crush on him. He was always after Inayori, but she ends up dying, and I kind of saw her as like the older sister, because at least I kind of had this mental image of that's how he saw her, as like an older sister, basically. So she ends up dying, and it ends up really messing up Shu's mind. So Shu loses his ever-loving mind, and he turns into like this like super evil dictator over all of these students, and all of these students are scared to death of him because he like gets all these like secret security that like he trains them to be his like own personal guard and stuff. So on the outside, after seeing all this, you're like, oh my gosh, Shu's a bad guy now. Holy crap, he's turned evil or whatever. But then you actually see his internal thoughts, and then in private he talks to Inayori, and you find out that another one of Shu's sort of friends lied to him and told him that like Hare was killed because of a virus or something. Like he lies to make Shu be like an evil dictator, basically. And there's a lot of little details that I'm skimming over, but basically, okay. Anyway, and so it turns out Shu is doing it because he really feels like it's the best way to save everybody. He's not doing it because he's evil or because he's trying to torture everyone or he's angry. He's doing it because he thinks it's the right thing to do. So even though he's wrong, all of his friends, like this big old circle of people, they all get pissed at him. Like they all are in on it. So then eventually it gets out that it was a lie, but everyone like frames it to make Shu look like the bad guy, and so he's like, so now everyone's pissed at him. So then like at the moment when they're about to break out of this quarantine zone, which is their ultimate goal, all of his friends turn on him. All of them do, except for Inayori. They all turn on him, and that's when super evil Guy suddenly shows up. Guy cuts off Shu's arm, he kidnaps Inayori, and they leave Shu to die. All of his friends were about to, like, kill him anyway, and then they leave him to die there. He's by himself, alone. Okay, so, like, it's madness. Like, I can't believe they betrayed him, and Inayori is the only one that didn't betray him, so they all leave him to die. So they're all scumbags. I don't care if any one of them dies. So some of them die along the way, and I'm like, good riddance, you deserved it. But then all this other stuff happens, and Shu basically finds a way, and I'm not going to go into it, but he finds a way to gain more powers back. So, and then, that's the other thing. Guy took his powers away. So then Shu finds a way to get powers back, and then he vows that he's going to save Inayori, and then he like goes to do so, and then now suddenly all of his friends come back along the way, and they're all suddenly friends again, which pissed me off because they all betrayed him, and he forgave them because he decided to be the bigger person, bigger than I would have been. So he forgives all of them. They all decide to work together, and then Shu figures out that his new power allows him to take away the virus from people, basically, and so he uses the power to take away the virus from people. And he uses the power to take away the virus from people, even though it's like slowly killing him essentially. But he does it anyway because again he's going for like MVP of the year. And then like in the final showdown, he does manage to defeat Guy, but Mana comes back and she's like in Inayori's body, and all this crazy crap is happening. But basically in the end, all of this stuff happens so that Shu is going to die. And basically, because his like powers are like all coming back to haunt him, and he like uses it because basically another apocalypse essentially starts because of mana being in Iniori's body and stuff. Well, Shu manages to like suck up the virus from everyone like in the world, and he managed to like suck up the virus, so it's gonna kill him. But Iniori was already gone because mana had like taken over her body or whatever, and so but Iniori somehow comes back, and she gives her life to save Shu. So then in the very end, it shows Shu alive. He's missing his like arm because the powers he had gained gives him like this super roided out fake arm. But now he has this like fake prosthetic arm. He's borderline blind. He has no powers. At least I didn't think he had any powers. And Iniori's dead, and he's not. And then in the end, it just shows them celebrating like Hare's birthday, even though she's long dead, and all of the friends are just together, and that's it. It's happily ever after. Because then Shu goes to like this park bench in the very end, and it shows him, and then it shows him like holding Iniori in his arms and stuff. Even though obviously she's actually dead, he's just thinking about the time they had together. And then the end. That's it. So it pisses me off because there's so much that was wrong. He forgave all of his friends, even though they're not really friends because they betrayed him and left him to die. Hare is dead because she was like his older sister friend figure, and she supported him through thick and thin, even though everyone else was scumbags. She's dead. Iniori's dead, even though she's the love interest, and she also stuck through him throughout everything. Guy is dead, even though he was a good guy, then a bad guy, and then he's dead. All of his friends are traitors and alive, and Shu is like, I mean, no offense, but a cripple, and he's like, and he's surrounded by people that are scumbags, and that's it. That's the ending of the whole thing. I was just so like, what was funny is through the whole thing, I wasn't like, holy crap, I can't believe this happened, because about 75% of the way in, it's like a shark smelling blood in the water. I was like, uh-oh, I feel like this is going to be a bad ending. And it's kind of, when you watch enough anime, you kind of get this gut feeling starts to develop, when basically you get this gut feeling of what might happen, and a lot of the time you may or may not be right, but a lot of the time my gut is usually correct because I've watched so many anime that I'm like, uh-oh, it feels like they're leading us up to a happily ever after that definitely feels fake. Well, it was fake because it was a bad ending, and it was just, the ending was bad. There was a lot of events that led up to it. They tried to frame it like it was happily ever after, and maybe that's what made it worse, is because in the very end, they framed it like it was definitely, they're like, it all worked out, or whatever. Like, they framed it like it was a good thing, and it just made it made me kind of more angry, because I'm like, so you framed it like it's a good thing when he's surrounded by people that, when it came to a head, left him to die. They betrayed him too. Some of them took a heavy part in his betrayal. And like, I just don't, loyalty for me is the biggest, most important like a trait anyone can have ever, is loyalty. In real life, in gaming, in anime, everything. Loyalty for me is everything. So when someone betrays you in your moment of need, I'm like, there is nothing redeemable about that person anymore. That's just, my brain writes them off. That's how I'm wired. So for me, the betrayal sits worse than everything else because they try to pretend it's all okay. When I'm like, but it's not okay because they betrayed him in his moment of need. His girl is dead. His love interest is dead. When clearly they loved each other. Iniori said it. Like, it's been said multiple times, so there was no, like, love triangle, really. There was no, like, that didn't last too long. There was no, like, doubts. I mean, they always loved each other, but then they just made it just to kill him. So you're like, what's the point? So that is basically the reason why I gave it a 3 out of 5. Originally, I actually gave it a 4 out of 5 because I'm like, well, there was enough good in it, and like there was a lot of that really pissed me off. But then the part of the rating is that it says there are 1 or 2 things that bothered me, but it's still worth a buy. That's the last part of 4 out of 5 rating. But then I'm like, but it's not worth a buy because I don't want to see it again, and the ending sucked. So therefore, it's not buyable. I would not spend money on this anime. So because of that, that's the reason I'm like, okay, so it's actually a 3 out of 5. Because if it was any higher, that would mean I'm saying there's a couple of bad things, but it's still purchasable. And I'm not saying that. So therefore, it has to be a 3 out of 5. So there it is. That is the big reason why I gave it the rating that I did, because of that. Because of what happened with the ending and the events that led up to it. That is why I'm saying don't buy it. It's not worth your money. It was there was a lot in it that was good, but not enough to make it buyable. There was and that's basically it, man. So anyway, I have already decided on the next anime that I am watching. And I am very excited for this one. This is one that I've seen the first 2 seasons, but then since I have watched it, there is another season, or at least 1 or 2 more seasons. 1 or 2 more seasons. So anyway, there's 1 or 2 more seasons since I last watched it, so I'm basically catching up. So of course I will give you the review when it's out, but it might be a while because there's like 3 or 4 seasons to it now, so it'll be a little bit. But anyway, it'll be there when it's there. So anyway, other than that though, so right after this, I will be recording part 2 of our Mass Effect 1 playthrough. And that'll be really sweet. And then tomorrow is probably the day that we'll finish Hitman. It might be 2 episodes, but odds are I'll probably try and push through and just finish the whole thing tomorrow, even if it's a longer episode, most likely. So you can be looking forward to that, because I certainly am. That'll be really exciting. And then of course it'll be part 3 tomorrow of Mass Effect. So lots of good stuff on the way. Anyway, that is going to call it for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed the content today, and we will talk to you guys later.